And we're live. Welcome, everyone. Today is Thursday, February 4th. For some reason, I wanted to write this as April 2nd every time I've posted something about this event. So um, it's very interesting, the time and space feeling that we're in right now, the sort of stretching and contracting of time. I'm very grateful to be here. For those of you who don't know me, and we've got a lot of new folks on the call this month, my name is Amy White. I am an intuitive medium, a channel, a truth bomb dropper, among other things. And I have been hosting these events now since the beginning of the pandemic as a free offering to out to the community and out to those who resonate with the vibration of the work. And so I'm grateful again for you all to be here today. I also want to take a moment and introduce Margaret. Margaret is here as a facilitator and moderator. She might be mediating today. And so as we get started, and I'll talk a little bit about the program here in a moment, but Margaret's going to be helping to let folks into the call that are showing up a few minutes late. She'll also be monitoring the chat so that if there at any time during the session today, you're having technical difficulties, or if there's a question about the program, please feel free to use the chat and Margaret will be watching that. Also, as we get further into the program today, the event today, we'll use the chat to open it up for questions from you all for the greater consciousness. So, to tell you a little bit about the greater consciousness, for those of you who are not aware, the greater consciousness is a group of energies that describe themselves as all of the wisdom that ever was, all of the wisdom that will ever be, and all of the wisdom that's here right now in this time and space within all of us. So, in essence, the greater consciousness is the connection into and the wisdom of each one of our inner beings, our inner knowings, our soul knowings. And so, as the greater consciousness comes through, very often, whether in one on one sessions that I have with clients or in group events such as this, the greater consciousness connects in with the unique wisdom that exists within all of us and helps to put words to feelings, to validate our inner knowing, to bring forward information that helps us to know that the whispers and wisdom that we're feeling within our own day-to-day practice is valid, and to also bring forward possibilities that we may not have yet considered. So the really magical, juicy part of when I channel the greater consciousness is it's this really loving, nurturing information, wisdom that does connect into each one of us as individuals, but it also comes through and connects in with each one of us as the collective. And so as I start today, I will go into do a short channel of the greater consciousness. And I basically just go into these sessions getting out of my own way and allowing myself to be the clearest channel that I can be so that the greater consciousness can come through with the wisdom and the information and the guidance and the perspective that we all need to hear right now in this moment in time. And then later, as I said, we'll get once the channeling is over, and it depends on the timing, really, how much they have to say and feel is appropriate to say in this setting. And then we'll open it up to questions. And the questions can be anything that's on your heart, in your mind, that you've been contemplating or processing. It doesn't have to be about the channel, though it can be. And it also can be about the process. So, however you feel called to ask, whatever you feel called to ask, is all of it is appropriate. Um, from what they've been giving me as I've been preparing for today's session, I think that the channeling today will be a little shorter. So if you've been on these calls before, Generally, we'll channel for about 30 to 45 minutes and then open for questions. But they're really making me feel like the shorter, it'll be likely a shorter channel today. But again, we'll see how that plays out. And for those of you who haven't seen me channel, um, it's a little bit different maybe than some of the other channels that you've experienced, but for me it's a little bit of a dance. At times I'm translating the information that the greater consciousness is flowing through, is channeling through to me, and at other times they're speaking directly through, and so it becomes a little bit of a dance. It's pretty easy to tell what's happening when just from the way that the my words, how I'm using the words, or when I refer to they or them. And when I say we, it's often associated with them speaking. But I think it'll be easy to relate to as we move forward. So I think that is all that I want to say today. So again, thank you for being here. And I'm already starting to go into channel, which is why sometimes my words don't come as easy and my sentences get a little garbled. So, as I'm taking just a moment here to deepen my connection, my ground, to open up the channel, I invite you to also take just a moment or two if you haven't already, or if you want to do it again. Take a couple of deep breaths, feel your feet on the floor, come into the present moment as much as possible in these very busy days that we all are finding ourselves in, and make a commitment or set an intention for being being here now in this loving, nurturing energy of the greater consciousness. So the first thing that the greater consciousness wants to say, and it feels like it's this honoring energy. They're saying that, this past month, they're talking about January, and they're saying that this past month was really what they're describing as somewhat of a garbage disposal month, and very typical as human beings coming into the new year. There's an opportunity for us to take a moment and look back at and touch into the year prior. And they're saying that, with 2020 being the year that it was for so many of us, whether we were impacted directly or just impacted as part of the collective energy, there's a lot to sort and sift through as we moved into this new year. And adding into that, really, this energy that was here for all of us in January made it feel like there was a lot of chomping up of our past, chomping up of our stories, a lot of emotions and memories and awarenesses coming to the surface to allow us, if we were ready or willing to let it go. But it wasn't happening for many of us in a easy, flowy way necessarily. And so, again, the greater consciousness just wants to honor the fact and validate the fact that if you were experiencing January, like a lot of folks were experiencing January and the energy of January, to just know that you weren't alone. And that many now are starting to feel the energy shift as we've moved into February. The greater consciousness is saying that very often they will not, or they do not put a lot of emphasis on this construct of time that we have created as humans, so month to month, hour to hour, but that they really want, there's something that's really important to communicate here about the timing of what's happening energetically in the world today, but more importantly, what's happening energetically within each one of us. Because this invitation to allow what's flowing up, to allow what's coming up for us to be chomped up in that garbage disposal or the compost and that there are many, many things that 2020 allowed us to get clear on. And there are many things that 2020 brought into our awareness that we're still processing. And it is all a process, they're saying. So if you have an expectation that there's a switch that's going to flip and things are going to change, good, bad, or otherwise, just know that it's a slower, more purposeful process of unfolding that's happening now for all of us, whether we're conscious or unconsciously aware of it happening. What the greater consciousness is bringing into my awareness right now is a practice that I was doing today, just a simple journaling practice where I had a few minutes in between clients today. And as I started to journal and connect in with my inner knowing and open up the my heart mind, and start to the intention thinking more with my heart than with my brain. The thing that was really interesting that happened today was that my writing started to slow down. And I'm generally a very fast writer when I journal because the information is coming in so quickly and I'm trying to process through it all. And yet today, it was almost the slow motion, the slow, purposeful writing each letter. And I love when I journal. I love to write in cursive, which I know is a language is a language of its own. That's sort of moving away for some people. But the reason that they're bringing this into my awareness is because right now they're saying the energy for us is so ripe for this, taking all that we ignored, in months past, trying to be very slow and purposeful about what we want to invite back into our reality, and how we want to use the information that's come forward to create our reality as we're moving through this year and beyond. And they're saying that this is very important. And it's something that the greater consciousness has been speaking about now for the last several months, probably longer, through much of 2020, is this idea that we each have within us the opportunity, the ability, the tools and process to start to take all of the things that we've learned about ourselves, about how we want to be in the world, about how we want to shine our light out into the world, and put it into practice, that we create, each one of us, the reality that we want around us. Now, for some, that's can feel like a really big stretch. So many, and even as I'm working through the day to day with my clients, so many people are saying, "How do I create reality when all of these things outside myself?" And the greater consciousness is saying that this is about coming into balance with both the outer world and our inner world. But when we're putting our focus from day to day, as we set our intent each day, we choose to start to slowly, purposefully, gently move through our days. And that's really the invitation here, is to be in that space of slow and purposeful creation and intentionality, that we get to choose what we want to focus on. We can be aware of what's happening outside of us, and there's no right or wrong here. But the idea, the invitation, the exclamation point that the greater consciousness is putting on this conversation is, what is it that you want to be seeing in your life and around you? Knowing that the only point of, and they're using this word loosely, control, is in how you choose to see the world, not denying what's happening, but to act in a way that is based on how your soul is pulling you, to act and take action in inspired ways, and to not, if it feels And the reason why they're saying not is because often when we're not aligning with that pole that they're talking about, we can feel out of sorts. And so when we feel out of sorts, it's likely not the best time to take an action. And again, as we slow down, as we become even more intentional and purposeful in the way that we're moving about our worlds, this becomes easier and easier to feel into when we're in alignment with and when we're not in alignment with our own soul's desire, our own soul's knowing. And different from a lot of the ways that we were brought up and a lot of the social constructs where we look around and we see who's doing what and how many people are these things and then aligning with that. The greater consciousness is saying and has been saying that the time is now for us to get very clear on the life we want to live and then start those things in motion, each one of us in our lives. The thing that is really important, they're saying, is that and it's really interesting because very rarely do they bring astrology into it, and whether you subscribe to astrology or not, to the message here is that in the energy that we're in right now, in this Mercury retrograde time that's just started, it is it is the bigger global invitation to start to take steps to revisit, to rewrite our narratives, to review the ways that we have been conditioned to believe our lives should be structured, and to start to pull back the layers of what we really don't align with and what we really do align with. The greater consciousness brought up last week on the community call that I run that right now is they're calling it go time. And while this is not the press the accelerator pedal to the floor time, it is go time in the sense that right now it is so fertile for us to be not just planting the seeds of what we want to have in our lives as we move forward through this year and beyond, but to really, again, come back to that space of intentionality. What do we want our lives to feel like? How do we want the experiences that we have to look and taste and smell? Like they're really going into the space and they're bringing forward this idea that our intentions around how we want our lives to look isn't necessarily just those things that we want to manifest. Though there's nothing wrong with manifestation. It's part of why we're here. But the core of the energy right now falls into the space of all of our senses. How do we want to feel? And they're saying that if you have a practice, a daily practice, that these are great questions to start to explore. And if you're exploring them, start to explore even on a deeper level, like beyond the surface. I want to feel good. I want to feel happy. Those are really great starting points. But what's below that? I want to feel invigorated. I want to feel alive. I want to feel energized with the possibilities that are here for me. It's in those feeling words, those senses, those that heart space that they were talking about, that heart brain, when we can connect into that space and really start to create this environment from that place, we're going to start to see that all of the things around us start to fall into place in a way that is even more magical and sacred than perhaps we're experiencing today. Because they're saying that the there's so much depth here for us. There's so much more awareness for us to tap into that aliveness and to not have to wait for anything in the future to do it. It's a really important part of this conversation is that when they say go time, they mean the time is now. That we have so much within each one of us and within the spaces that we're creating around us to start to not just explore the possibilities and opportunities that are here, but to start to move in the direction of those opportunities, to hold space for our biggest dreams, our biggest longings, our biggest desires without judgment, without the need to rationalize those things away. This is one of the most rich times for us in this year to be putting these things in place. Because what they're showing me is that as the energy continues to shift throughout this year, we're going to have more and more opportunities to start to press the accelerator, to start to move forward towards the the actions required, the actions necessary for us to start to see these things come to fruition. But right now, and they're saying that they know the message has been plant the seeds, water the seeds, grow, weed, grow, watch, monitor. Once in a while you'll see a sprout. Sometimes it takes a long time. They know this is the messaging, but this is a different level. They're saying this is the only way that the only words that they say they can give me to describe this time right now is it's the most fertile soil that we can get our hands into right now. And it doesn't mean that there won't be opportunities for this fertile soil down the road, but they're talking about this time and space right now of what the opportunities for us are. And they're saying that it's not, this is the beauty of this process, is that we don't need to know what the big dream is. We don't need to have all of those blueprints created. We don't have to have all of the fixtures picked out and the colors out and the landscaping created. We don't have to have all of that. But what the the invitation, and that's the word that they keep using, the invitation is to start to feel into it. How do you want to feel? How do you want it to feel? How do you want to feel in your space? How do you want to feel in the work that you're doing? How do you want to feel in the way that you move about the world? They keep coming back to this idea of feeling because they're saying that right now this is where the rubber meets the road, that everything comes, and this is not new information they're saying, but it is time now. This is where all of what we've been learning and practicing and enhancing in the way that we're moving about the world is here for us to really create from this time and space. And there's it also doesn't mean that there won't be more garbage disposal moments. This year is a year of vision. This year is a year of cleaning up the debris. And they're saying, by the way, and PS, as we clear through these layers, we're going to discover more debris, and we're going to discover more areas where we can revisit, rewrite the narrative, review, and come more and more into alignment with what and who we're here to be. This is the blossoming of our souls, and our souls really remembering in a way that we haven't been able to tap into until now. Part of it is the work we've been doing intentionally in our on our own journeys through our own experiences. And part of it is an opening of conscious awareness that is growing They're saying leaps and bounds day by day by day. One of the most beautiful visions that the greater consciousness has brought through me and continues to bring forward is this idea that we are all building the bridge. We're building the bridge to this next time and space that we're going to move into. And it's one step and the bridge builds around you. One step and the bridge builds around you. And as we're able to allow the bridge to form around us, to build around us without the need to control where the bridge is going or what's on the other side. That's where they're saying the most powerful creative creation that we can bring forward into our lives occurs. And so, as we're talking about all of this fertile ground and the go time, and it's time to plan and start to put things in place, but not from a doing perspective, but from a feeling perspective. It is this bridge that each one of us is building, one step, one step, one step. And I as this information is coming through, and I'm having this dual conversation right now with the greater consciousness, because one of the things that's very interesting that I can feel viscerally as this information is coming through is this idea that we have, and many of us are really on the path of this already, is that this idea of this bridge building one step, one step, one step isn't just about creating what we want in our lives, but it's even bigger than that, because the greater consciousness is saying that this is sort of the new way that we're being invited to move about the planet from here going forward. So the idea is not just for the purpose of getting to some end place, but the purpose to explore each step and each way that the bridge is showing up and is building around us, step by step by step from here going forward. And that what they're showing me, which is really beautiful, is this idea that as we put this into practice, more intricate designs of this bridge show up, and whatever that looks like for each one of us. So, they're showing it to me architecturally, but of course, it's really in the idea that it becomes richer and richer and more delicious and more expansive as we continue this process of allowing. They want me to bring up this idea too, that there's no missing this time, that each one of us are on this very unique journey, and the idea that in whatever way we're able to take this information and start to put it into practice, that is enough. That is enough for the journey that we're each on. And so it's very interesting, and they keep wanting to come back to this thought of being aware of where we go into comparison, where we start to look at journeys of people around us and say, well, we're all kind of doing this journey, but they're way here, or they've achieved what I'm working towards achieving, or they're behind me, and but they're catching up. I mean, there's all of these ways that we do this as humans, and there's no judgment here when they say this, but they're really strongly guiding each one of us to come into awareness of those moments when we go into comparison, and to just allow it to be part of the process, but don't put our energies there. That we, each one of us, can't know fully what someone else's journey is. And so, what their journey, what others' lessons, what others' soul contracts are, don't have a lot of meaning for us, because each one of us comes with a different purpose, with a different um, agreement, for lack of better words, of what we're going to learn during this time. Now, the possibilities and the opportunities far outnumber the days that we have here in the physical. So we have the ability to create these journeys and co create these journeys based on our soul's calling and not based on what anyone else is doing. And this idea, which the greater consciousness has spoken to us about on these calls before, this idea of taking personal responsibility for our journeys is and continues to be the theme for this year and the theme for time now, to be able to come into that space of really connecting home with what it is that we're being called forward to do. And and the greater consciousness says that is the most powerful connection, the most powerful roadmap, the most powerful navigation system that we will ever have. And the more we turn inward and the more we listen to that inner calling and start to create the bridge from there, the more joyful and peaceful and expansive and adventurous our lives will be this year. I mean, they're not saying this is a future thing. This is right now, right here for each of us. And the journey and the joyful practice here is the exploration of what that looks like for each one of us. And so as the channeling is coming to a close, the greater consciousness invites us all to find a way to incorporate each day some inquiry into what our lives could and will look like when we start to move in the direction of the soul's calling, when we start to sink into this heart space, the heart brain, and really follow the guidance from there. And again, this isn't about what anyone else is doing, what anyone else is saying. This isn't about opinions. This isn't about experts and their belief systems. This is really about each one of us coming into contact with the knowing and then moving forward from there. It's expansive, and we're all here in this time, not just this time and space on the planet, but here as a community in this event for the purpose of individually and collectively starting to integrate this energy in a way that allows us to hold a bigger space for each one of us to start this exploration. It's really powerful when we bring a group of people together who comes into that contact and alignment, each one, and starts to explore, and they're making me like it's just this beautiful flow and unfolding, together and individually, that we're all doing, right now. The greater consciousness is saying that this information is so important to take the time to digest and then to determine which parts of it really resonate and which parts of it it doesn't seem to fit for you right now, because that's part of this personal responsibility, to know and to sense into what is yours, what is meant for you right now. And if it's meant for you, the other information, when it's time, it'll come back around. So there's nothing that you will miss here. Nothing. I'm going to open it up to questions. If you would like to ask a question, simply put a question mark in the chat, and Margaret will help to facilitate the questions and unmute.
Okay, we have a question from Michelle. Michelle, you want to unmute? Go ahead.
Hi, Michelle. Can you hear me? You're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Can you hear me now? I had a call coming.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. No, I can't.
Michelle?
Okay. Yes,
Oh,
can you hear me now? I just took off my AirPods. Sorry. So
yeah.
I'm trying to keep it from all the noise in the background. So
No worries.
Oh my
No
God.
worries.
oh, so embarrassed. It's been kind of like a lot going on while you were channeling. So thank you for what you do. I think what really resonates is I resonate with a lot of things that you had to say. And for me, my soul has come forward more in the past year. And so it's still really confusing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I hear you saying is, and I just had this revelation a few days ago. I was journaling, like, it's really easy to kind of chase and look for meaning rather than just be patient for insight.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that that's on the right track. And if you have anything else to help me,
Yeah.
because I feel like this is so strong for me. I'm like literally I'm literally reinventing myself as we speak. And so my challenge right now is there's so many paths that I could take, and it's confusing me. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the things that the Greater Consciousness was talking about just a few minutes ago, with the fact that we have unlimited opportunities and possibilities. And so often, and especially when we're first really tuning into and having awareness of our inner knowing, our inner being, right? The soul partnership, right? That we're coming into as we're evolving as a species, whether we are conscious or unconscious of it. And it's that idea that you come into contact with all of the, or many of the possibilities. And it can be exciting and anxiety provoking at the same time. And so what the greater consciousness is saying is to simply take the time. It's just like they were saying about my practice today, and how as I was journaling, like I literally slowed my writing down so much that it was almost like I wasn't writing it myself. And I was just letting my soul come through. Excuse me. And from there, clarity came, because I got to a place where I slowed down enough that I really heard things in a different way. Excuse me. And I think that the same it's the same application, especially for where you are right now energetically, is to slow it all down, to know you don't have to do all of it, you don't have to do any of it, but to take as much step back as you can to allow sort of the cream to come to the top. Like, what is in It's like, what is in most alignment for me right now? And then not figure it out, but allow it to rise. And you'll know because you are so tuned in to the information that your soul wants you to know. But now it's about being in the driver's seat and saying, all right, we're going to do this together. We're going to co create this together. So it can't just be one or the other. Does that make sense?
It does. And in fact, I'm a huge creator and I keep having insight to not create, like to just chill a minute because I get ahead of myself. Almost like you were saying when you're writing fast. And it's almost like I feel in a way that I'm desperate and I'm trying to grab onto something to plant. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Like
Completely. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I feel.
Yeah, and again, there's no judgment here because it's such a and I feel it too when I'm in my own practice and I get into a flow and ideas start coming and it's all swirling around. It's very exciting. But the thing that we do as humans so often is we get the inspiration and then we're like, okay, soul, I got it from here. And then we like bull in a china shop right through it. And we don't give ourselves time for things to percolate and to form. And I think that the whole message that the greater consciousness was talking about today is this idea of allowing things to take shape and take form and then act from there. So it is, I think you're spot on with the way that your this information is landing for you. And it's not to not create because the greater consciousness is saying that creation is almost part of it's like you breathing, but it's not forcing, it's allowing. It's not forcing the creation. It's almost like sitting down, and I don't know like the medium that you use to create, but they're showing me like literally like finger painting. It's like, yeah, stick your hand in the paint, put it on the canvas, and then just allow it to create for you. So it's that kind of idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like, well, my biggest cross to bear is control. It's trying to control what comes through, trying to figure it out. That really resonated with me, where you're like, don't figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and I would go ahead.
I was just saying, but sometimes I feel like I'm running out of time. So it's really good to hear that collectively we're not.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just, and I know that I'm trying to learn a lesson of trust.
Yeah.
And as a control freak, many times we don't trust.
Well, very, very, very much so. And as the Greater Consciousness was saying earlier about this time is so fertile to rewrite the narrative. The control freak badge of honor might be something that would be there would be value in you creating a new narrative, so that you're not carrying that narrative forward. Because when you do, then all of the work that you're doing to listen and move with intentionality is bumping up against this belief that you're holding that you're in this one identity. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that's where the confusion comes from of, literally not knowing the next step, but like feeling, but I totally understand your message of waiting for the next step to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Allow the bridge, that part of the bridge to build around you. And it is the greater consciousness is totally honoring the fact that as humans, we have a challenge sometimes with patience and with releasing control. And a lot of it has to do with how we've been conditioned to believe that we
Yeah.
have to act and be in a certain way. And so the invitation for you specifically is to, as much as you can on a day-to-day basis, just release the grasp a little bit. And the trust is not an overnight thing. It can be, but often it's an unraveling, it's an untying of the cords that we've allowed to be created for us. But they're saying, just this is you're doing it. You're taking the steps. So as best you can, step by step, trust as best you can when you can, recognize when you can't. Don't unpack your bags and move in there. Don't create a house that says untrusting control freak, because that's the house you'll live in if you choose to do that. But try to visit both spaces. And the more that you do that, you'll start to see the contrasting differences. And you'll list towards the one that feels more connected to your soul.
Okay, thank you so much, Amy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ryan.
Yes. Hi, Amy. Thank you, Amy.
Hey.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm sorry I was
You're
running a little bit late, so I'm excited to rewatch the recording. So much I even caught just at the end is ridiculously timely for me. The words that you were using, joyful, peaceful, expansive, adventurous. A year ago, I wouldn't have thought that those words could be grouped together. And I felt like I did a lot of work last year. I've been on your calls for a while of like, build the bridge, just build the bridge, take a few steps. And within the last month, I think we get these moments sometimes where things pick up really beautifully and the energy is rolling. And the imagery that I gave someone last week was, I feel like I was in the river and the river started to flow and it didn't freak me out, but it was pulling. And now I feel like the river is going and I am somehow joyful and excited and know almost nothing. And I'm loving it. And what I've been meditating on, similar to Michelle, is this notion of trust. It's funny. I'm someone who loves to journal. And when I feel like my spirit really needs me to know something, I will find myself writing the same word over and over. And for the last month, it's been trust, trust, trust. My question is, I feel so at ease, despite the fact that like confetti, like my sort of earthly needs are up in the air. So my question is, if you have any guidance for like right now, I feel like I'm flying and I'm happy to be flying. And like, I feel like I'm pretty close to the time in which I need a roof over my head and a job. So I'm moving across the country and really trusting myself because the leap feels so right. And just would love any wisdom you have on how to just keep trusting that those smaller details are going to materialize in the nick of time.
Yeah. And the greater consciousness says that your answer is in the choices you've already made. You took a huge leap of faith and trusted that. How can anything other than what you need come to be? Does that make sense? Like, it's just so, and they're saying that it's really interesting, and this is not just a you thing, but this is like a human thing, is that often we take these big leaps of faith and we really do, and we mean it and we trust, and the net appears and all of it, and we get caught up in the day to day. It's it's not in the sitting around eating bonbons waiting for the thing to come, but it's in the listening. It's in the journaling. It's in the practice. It's in that connection to yourself where the inspiration will come. And the greater consciousness is saying that one of the things for you to really be conscious of, and we might have spoken about this before, are the things that come into your awareness that you feel resistance to. And that can be anything from a job that feels like, not something that you'd be happy with, but not for any other reason than your own internal judgment, right? And this is different than, and again, discernment comes in here, right? Don't take a job because you're going to be unhappy there. But they're saying that oftentimes what happens is that things come up and it doesn't look exactly the way that we expect, and so we resist it. And so the biggest thing for you to bring into your awareness as you're flowing in this river is where things come up and you stop them, or you block them, or you resist them, knowing that it may be the thing that leads you to the thing that leads you to the thing. And when you stop the first thing, that next thing or next thing has a harder time finding its way to you. You know, the thing will find its way to you, but we're talking about how do we make it as ease and flow and joyful flow as we can. And so for you, it's about that awareness to resistance. You're trusting, they're showing me like you're trusting. It's like, and there's almost a part of your spirit that says, bring me another cliff. Like I'm ready. I'm going to do it again. Because I know I can do this and trust it. And so not so much focus on trusting or not trusting. You're in that flow, but resisting and not resisting is sort of that next layer that's opening up for you. So
That's resonates so powerfully. I do feel like I've been honoring myself and trying to really listen, but I think it's great advice to pay attention to what maybe I'm not even giving a second glance to at first, just because
Mhm.
it's not what I, like you said, what I thought was going to be for me, and the sort of ingrained idea I have of what's going to work or not work.
Mhm.
And literally was just talking to someone yesterday about creating some room, some gray area,
Yeah.
and being a little bit more uh explorative or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that space that you create for all possibilities. So what the greater consciousness is saying is that if you look at everything that you do as sacred and on your path, then there's nothing that you can choose that's not for you. Even if, and you know, this is the paradox, right? Even if you make a choice and it leads you to a brick wall, it's still for you. Like it's all sacred. So as we as we as a collective kind of taken this message too, because it's big, it's for you and it's for all of us to just be aware of, you know, that we can be in this sacred space no matter what we're choosing. And I think that's really powerful for you. So it might, and that might tie into the resistance too of, you know, like if you have to take on a job that isn't in your purview today to bridge the gap, right? That section of the bridge may look different than you're expecting, and that's okay. Like it's okay, and there's nothing that you're doing wrong.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. Next, we have Manju. Go ahead.
Manju, can you unmute?
Can you hear me now?
I can. How are you?
I'm doing good. What's coming up for me is that how do I maintain a sense of self in my relationships, especially in my relationships with my parents and siblings? I'm realizing that I didn't get to develop a sense of self growing up in childhood, and I'm having trouble relating to them while I maintain a sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, this is troubling me more than it used to. And how can I make peace with this situation? And, you know, what is the loving thing for me to do?
That's such a beautiful, beautiful question. So the greater consciousness is saying that the sense of self and how you are nurturing and fostering the relationship with that inner being, with that inner part of you, has grown exponentially over this past, they're saying like year to 18 months. And so because of that, there is an out of alignment because your family of origin still holds very strongly to the picture that they've had of you for your whole life. And the biggest piece here is that as you keep recommitting and recommitting and recommitting to yourself, the energy will sort itself out. the expectation that they're saying, greater consciousness is saying, is that the expectation isn't about them seeing yourself, your soul, the way you do, because that is their journey that they can choose to take or not. But where you continue to, and they're showing me that you're doing this, where you continue to hold strongly to the self that you're coming into more and more contact with, that's the most loving and kind and generous thing that you can do for everyone involved. It's back to the conversation that we were just having about control. You can't control how they're going to respond. And perhaps it is in the ability to be in a space of allowing each one of them around you to have their journey, even if it doesn't look like your journey, that you come into a deeper sense of peace around the choices that they're making, especially in the choices that they're making towards you. Because, excuse me, many of them, if not all of them, really like the way that you were conditioned to be in the world before you decided to come into deeper contact with yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel bad. Yeah, sometimes I don't feel like, talking to them when they call me. So rather than, being angry or blurbing at them, I just, silently not take the call. But then I feel bad that, I'm doing this to my parents. At the same time, there is this inner struggle going on within me to maintain my sense of self in my relationship with them.
And I don't know if we've talked about this before, Manju, but there's this idea that the greater consciousness brings through me often about self-harm through service. And so while it can feel like you're letting down your parents by choosing to hold a boundary that protects and nurtures your soul connection, if you are choosing to disregard yourself for the service of them, it is a self-harming action. And so to be really aware of that in the space of, and again, in the rewriting the narrative of not letting them down, but taking care of yourself, nurturing yourself, honoring yourself. And in that rewriting of the narrative, it will become easier and easier. But just like anything, when we're learning to do something different than we've done before, it can feel uncomfortable. And that's okay. It really is an indicator that you are shifting the trajectory for yourself, which is why you're here, to come into that deeper and deeper contact and alignment with who you are.
Yeah, thank you. That clarifies a lot of things. Yeah.
And the greater consciousness brings through just a reminder to be as gentle with yourself as you can, as you're learning to be in this different way in the world. It will become easier, they're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't seem to have anyone else in the queue right now. Until now. Jessica, would you like me to go ahead and read this? I guess. Yeah, okay. She says, I am having trouble. Oh, she doesn't have a microphone. I am having trouble deciding on getting the COVID-19 vaccine. I fear the possible long-term side effects since it is so new. but I also want to be a team player and contribute to the solution. Does the greater consciousness have any insight about the safety of the vaccine?
That is a powerful question. The greater consciousness is saying that when you're making a decision, any decision, whether it's the vaccine or a move or a new job or a new relationship, to do it from the place of alignment. And so when you are in a place of being torn between the two options, in this case, the vaccine or not to vaccine or vaccinate or not vaccinate, to to take the time to come into clarity. Often it is around the path of least resistance. But given that the question is coming up and that you are not feeling a strong sense of what your inner being is calling you towards, the suggestion, the guidance is to continue to explore this for yourself. As far as the safety goes, the greater consciousness is saying that the safety of the vaccine has a lot to do with our belief systems associated with it. And excuse me, overall, the human body is designed to be a self-healing mechanism. And again, they're not saying to get the vaccine or not get the vaccine. They're saying that our bodies are designed to be self-healing mechanisms. And so it becomes really important and very empowering for us to take the time to make the decision that feels most resonant to us. The greater consciousness is saying that you can't make a wrong decision as long as you're, and not even as long as, but to make the decision for your highest good. What is in your highest good? And they're saying it's not about being a team player externally, it's about being a team player internally. Because when you do that, similar to the conversation we were just having with Manju, when you are coming into alignment and making the choice from your soul's desire, then you're making the choice that's in your highest good. There are many, they're saying, there are many opinions about the vaccine. The what the greater consciousness is saying right now for us as humans, and part of this is our opportunity to explore our own inner knowing, is it's good, bad, or hard to tell right now. And it is really based on our belief system. And this is not to go into the space of judgment or blame or shame around, our thoughts creating our environments. This is about us coming into the deepest alignment we can and making the decisions for ourselves from there, regardless of what it is. That is the true path of least resistance, they're saying. And they're saying that if you're not able to come into that space, you don't have to make a decision right this moment. I don't know if that maybe you can use chat too.
She said, yes, thank you so much. Amy, that helps so much.
Yes, the greater conscious wants to talk about this for just one more moment, because they're saying that anytime there's a vilification of something or a collective pushing for something, that it becomes more and more important for us to come into the space of our knowing. And the greater consciousness is saying, and they mean this is not, this is not said lightly, that when we are able to slow down to really come into contact, to come into practice with that feeling of what is in our highest, what resonates for us. It is when we will make the choices that are in our highest, regardless of what anyone is doing around us. It's really the same extension of the message that they've been talking about this entire call today. Excuse me.
I don't have anyone else at the moment. But I have a quick question on what you were just talking about. And you've told me before, or I heard you say about, just like what you just said, you have to be in alignment with what you want to do. And the it's not my story thing. I've had a couple of times where I've posted pictures and like I'm a total I'm all for masks. I wear them, I whatever, but there's certain things I let down my guard, or I've posted pictures of like, me and a couple friends having dinner, and I'll get, the mask police that are like, oh, I don't see any masks, blah, blah, blah. Well, in New York, you don't have to wear masks. How do I've tried to just ignore it, but also is there a way to say, well, that's not my story, or whatever?
Mhm, mhm. I mean, what the it really comes back to, where do you want to put your energy? And are you living from the space of personal responsibility that feels in alignment to you? And if you are, and you feel solid in that, as you call the mask police, or other people's opinions, or the way that people are pushing against this or for this, or none of that can can rock your foundation, as you come more and more into the understanding that you're living your truth, and what you feel is appropriate for you. And it is, again, not the idea of this personal responsibility is not about, I'm going to do what I want and F everybody, right? The idea of personal responsibility is, what is my truth? What feels right for me, aligned for me? And then live from that place. You're not, just as the greater consciousness was talking to Manju a few minutes ago about the idea that her living from her truth isn't going to change necessarily immediately how other people see her. And yet it doesn't change how she sees herself. And it's the same for you. It is really, the greater consciousness is saying that the more energy that you focus on this alignment and the coming into your true knowing, the less and less and less the outward opinions will shake you. And they're also saying that this is part of the clarification, for you, when these mask police or when people come forward very strongly with their opinions that might differ from yours, for you to say, all right, you don't have to say it to them, but it's a great opportunity to be the observer and say, I'm listening to this, and does it feel truth? Or do I feel like what I'm doing is more truth for me? And that's a great way to look at these opportunities, is this idea of clarification. It gives you some time, it gives you the practice to continue to get clearer and clearer. I would say too, the greater consciousness is bringing into my awareness, and this actually is a great exercise for everyone here. If you haven't been on the calls when I've gone through the truth and lies tool or process, it's a really simple way to just do a check-in. You know, is this my truth? Is this not my truth? And if it's not your truth, it opens up the space for you to explore what elements of what someone else is saying or some other opinion or some news information or whatever, you know, is feels like it fits into my puzzle. But the truth, just really quick, the truth and lies process is where you sit in quiet contemplation, meditation. It doesn't have to be for long, a few breaths. And you tell yourself a lie. And as you're telling yourself a lie, you just see where the lie shows up in your body. And when I teach this, I tell people make it a big bold lie, like something that your brain can't rationalize. So I tend to use like my name is Fred, you know, or my name is George, or something that, you know, my brain can't go, well, yeah, it's sort of, no, my brain goes, yep, it's not, your name is not George. And so, and it's funny, you have to kind of play the trick with the brain because the brain, the thinking mind loves to get involved in these things. But when you can clear the brain aside and they can be part, it can be part of the process, but it's not the process. And you say, okay, here's my lie. Where do I feel this in my body? And I know for me, and I've been practicing this for a long time, immediately when I tell myself a lie, my gut tightens and my tongue starts to buzz. In fact, my tongue is buzzing now, even talking about this. And it's pretty funny, excuse me, that is the way that my body is telling me something is not my truth. And then on the other side of it, you know, I sit again and I tell myself a truth. And again, a big, bold, a truth that I can't rationalize away. And I see where that resides in my body. And for me, my truth relaxes my shoulders, my lungs feel expansive. And I can tell very quickly when I can't quite discern without a practice, wow, this is something that's my truth and I need to explore it more. Or this just isn't my truth and I don't have to put any energy towards it. Now, if this is some practice that you haven't done before, it might take a little bit of time to really connect in and feel where this truth and untruth shows up in your body. But it's one that I will tell you I use often just to test and validate and clarify my own feeling, especially in cases like the vaccine, cases where we feel like we're being cornered or that we have to somehow explain ourselves to someone, to be able to go, is this my truth? No, I don't have to take any action here because it's not my story. It's not my story. Does that make sense, Margaret? I know you've practiced this truth and lies exercise before, but it's really powerful to even bring up again because often, and I will include myself in this to say that, you know, I have this great big toolbox of tools and techniques and process practice, but sometimes when I get caught in the moment, I forget about it. And so as a great reminder that use these tools in a way that helps to discern where the energy needs to be, where the energy needs to be expended. And on the flip side, the greater consciousness is reminding us that if you feel inspired and not from a place of ego or a place of, you know, of having to show someone that you're right and they're wrong or they're wrong and you're right, if you feel inspired to speak up and say, hey, just so you know, I'm following all of the guidelines for my state. Boom. But only if you feel inspired, because you don't owe anybody an explanation for something that you're doing, and especially when you're living in your alignment. But that's you know, they're not, the greater consciousness is never out here saying don't stand up for yourself or don't advocate, or don't get involved in things that your soul is calling you towards, whether it's social justice or otherwise. But just to be really, this is a time for us to be really discerning about how we spend our energy. And the more we focus that attention and energy to nurturing and fostering the connection with our inner knowing, with our inner being, with our soul's wisdom, then the more, again, back to what the greater consciousness was saying earlier, we create the reality that allows us to thrive. Does that?
Yep. And there are no other questions.
Wonderful. Well, we're just about at time. So thank you everyone for joining the event today. I'm grateful that you're here. And if there's any questions after this event, please feel free to send me an email. I will be emailing out to each of you the link to this replay so you can listen to it again. I also wanted to just bring up, there are 2 events that I'm going to be speaking at over the next week or so that you might be interested in. And one is doing a Lunar New Year event next Friday with Conscious Spirits Festival, Conscious Spirits Media. And I'll be channeling a message for the energy of 2021 during that call. And that's next Friday, that I think it starts at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then I'm also part of a Simply Happy Summit, which starts this coming Monday. And you can find all of this information on my website. They're free. So, I think the lunar event is on a sliding scale that starts at $11. But if you're interested in more time with me, those are 2 events that you can participate in. So on my website, under events, you'll find all the information. So thanks all. I really appreciate you being here, and I look forward to doing this again. I kind of consider this to be January's call, so I'll be doing another event at the end of February, and then the 4th Thursday of every month through June, and then we'll see where I'm guided from there. Big love and peace and joy to all. Be well.